Do we want China to set the standards of AI or the US?
How does Europe become the global leader in AI?
Today, AI is not like have some guy sitting in a basement coding.
We're saying that we don't want to follow, we want to lead. Hello everyone and welcome to the 10th episode of the YEPP Show. YEPP's podcast broadcasted from the European Parliament here in Brussels. My name is Edelmira Ferri and I'm the Secretary General of the Youth of the European People's Party. Today we will be discussing on an important and very pressing topic, AI and digitalization, and the efforts of the European Union to protect fundamental rights while ensuring fair digital markets. And for that, we would like to welcome a member of the European Parliament, Arba Kokalari. How are you, Arba?
Thank you very much. I'm fine. It's busy times in Brussels. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. And thank you very much for making the time and for being with us. And also we have today Lucia. She's an EPP Press Director at Training, and I'm sure that she will have many questions for Arba as well.
Yeah, hello. Thank you so much for inviting me also.
Welcome. Well, for you to know, Arba has been a member of the European Parliament since 2019, so she's very familiar with this institution and with all the work that they do in here. She's currently a member of the Committee on the Internal Market and Consumer Protection, and also a member of the Committee on Women's Rights and Gender Equality. And for those of you who are familiar with YEPP, she used to be one of our vice presidents. So she is still, forever will be like a member of YEPP. In recent years, she has specialized in matters related to AI. So hopefully she will help us unpack this very dense topic today. As we may know, over the past decade, the European Union has built a not so easy to understand regulatory framework on AI, including famous policies such as the Digital Services Act from 2020, the Digital Markets Act from 2022, and also, for example, the AI Act from 2024. And now we know that there are a lot of discussions going on regarding the Digital Omnibus, a sort of simplification and competitiveness agenda. So Arba, in this case, we will be happy if you help us, to understand this general context. And for you, I have these questions today. What do you think, while recognizing the risk associated with AI, we would like to understand a little bit more how the AI Act safeguards EU citizens as well. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, there is a lot of things you can say about that, but I think if I can just start by saying a little bit of a story about this topic, is when I left the YEPP board, I think it was in late 2018, a while ago, even if it feels like yesterday. And I was going to start campaigning for the European Parliament. I had ran before. Everybody in YEPP knew that I had run before for the European Parliament. And then suddenly when I got elected, my first day in the European Parliament was like a little bit of a shock because I came from a country where tech, digitalization, AI, machine learning, has been something that we see as something hopeful that could bring better things for our society, create better products, make the work against emissions more efficient, tackle the big society problems with AI and tech. And then I came to the European Parliament. It was a bit of a shock because everybody there was so afraid of AI. So it was like two different worlds. And in YEPP, we were very tech, digital positive, of course, before. And I thought that I knew the EU system by being in YEPP, because everybody was so digital friendly. And then I come to the European Parliament and people here was like, oh, this is dangerous. We need to protect our citizens from AI. The robots will take over the world tomorrow. It was only risk.
Resistance, right?
Yeah. Resistance. And I think that is a little bit of the reason why our digital legislation, especially the perception of AI in the European Union, has been so, regulatory,
Dense.
burdensome and dense, because the mentality in the EU bubble was before very anti-AI. And I think that most of our legislation is always so much risk-based. What if this happened? Let's legislate. We need to protect our citizens from, sometimes, I would say it's been like fantasies, things that could happen in the future but hasn't occurred yet. And that has been specifically on digital and AI. So, this is not a argument to say that we don't need any legislation, because we do, definitely. I think definitely there is a need, a good thing that we have an AI legislation in Europe, that we have one and not 27 different national AI legislation. That would be much worse. I think that the AI Act has a good structure in general, that it's risk-based, and meaning that if you are working with AI and customer service, or you have AI tools within your email, then you don't have to report that. But if you're a low-risk AI, for example, if your customer service is an AI discussing or handling stuff with your consumer, and then the consumer doesn't know that it's an AI, then you need to tell it. We will have transparency obligations if you're a low-risk AI, so that consumers and customers know that that they are talking with an AI, not a human. I think that's important. So the transparency of when AI use is not, and that we have higher obligations for high-risk AI. For example, in when you're hiring a person, that it's a person that is making that decision and not an AI, or that we have it in the healthcare system and in our judiciary, for example, that there has to be compliant obligations and a risk assessment and a risk awareness. So I think the structure is very good, but it's not balanced. It hasn't been balanced. It's been a little bit too much of a risk-based approach, and it hasn't really. The legislation hasn't helped innovation. And I think that a proper legislation need to both think about the safety and the risks, but also enable innovation. It's always like a hand in hand.
Yeah, I think that it's about to find the right balance, right? It's good to prevent this kind of like risk, doing these risk assessments, but we cannot block, as you were saying, innovation or progress, right? So, Lucia, any thoughts on this, or do you have any questions?
So, like many of my generation, I have integrated the AI in my daily life, and not only, I think, in simple tasks, I think we have integrated in our workflow, and we have been talking it in our communications department, that the AI has moved from a helpful tool into a more cognitive work. It maybe we have been using it for our press tasks or more cognitive work, and this is very fascinating, but also could be a bit unsettling. And so my question for you, Kokalari, is that as we have been seeing the AI starting to outperform like difficult tasks that the humans do, so how can the current European regulation ensure a balance between fostering this massive boost in productivity and protecting the unique value of the human expertise and employment? Like, how can we arrive to this balance?
I think that this is usually what happens when we have major technological shifts in the society, that the tasks that we are doing are always changing. I mean, like before social media, there was no social media managers, you know, and then suddenly there were new jobs as social media managers, and, you know, and I think that is what's happening right now also in the labor market, that enable for you to be you know, attractive in the labor market, you need to learn how to use AI and AI tools. The option is not learning AI, because then there is a risk for, you know, job losses, or that our jobs in Europe go to the US. So enable for us to you know, create new jobs. The AI literacy in the society has to be higher than it is today. It has to be easier to use AI tools in the educational system, among teachers, students, in the healthcare system, and in every area. And I think because that is also what's going to make our society more efficient, the welfare system more efficient. I mean, we have a growing population of aging population in Europe, while the demands in the healthcare system and the elderly care will just be higher. And then we need to make sure that AI is used to make sure that the human interaction can be used more efficiently. And I think that the development of AI will make also human interaction even more important than it has to be today. And in some way we have differences where some jobs will be lost. Yes, I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but we also have other parts of society where a lot of companies cannot find skilled people for the different tasks. We have shortage of labor in other areas. So we're in this, you know, start of a big shift in the society, also in the labor market, and we cannot just hide from the future and the technology that is coming. Either we, you know, own it
and adapt to it,
and make the best of it to make this continent world leading, or we just try to, you know, shut down, put on fires, you know, and we will only lose. And I think the best option we can do is to make sure that AI comes to benefit for our society, and that it creates value, it creates prosperity, because that's what we're seeing in the US. The reason why the European economy, our growth and prosperity is lacking behind the US is because the US have used tech and AI and innovation much more efficient than we have done, which means that they have created new products, new services, new innovation that have created, you know, jobs and prosperity in the US. So I would say that it would be a big risk if Europe is not using more AI. And today AI is not like a trend. You have some guys sitting in a basement, you know, coding. AI is replacing coding as well, but it's a geopolitical necessity. This is infrastructure. This is the basics of our future, and we really need to be fast in adapting it in the best possible way.
Yeah, I think that we do agree. We have to transform like this speech, you know, like from seeing AI as an enemy to seeing it maybe as maybe not your best friend, but something that is going to happen, yes or yes. So you better adapt, you know, and the faster you can and in the best possible way. Thank you. Well, now I would go for another question for you, Arba. I think that we've touched base, you know, already, but with all these pieces of regulation in the European Union, do you think that we are kind of like jeopardizing European markets' competitiveness? Now that we talk, you know, all the time about being competitive or going back to competitiveness in the European Union.
I think that we are the good intention of the legislations and it's not one legislation that is the problem, is the amount of legislation. So let's say you are a startup from Madrid, let's say, or a scale up in Stockholm. You're competing with a Chinese competitor or an American app developer. And if you, as a Spanish and Swedish startup and scale up, need to put so much work hours and hire lawyers to understand the bureaucracy, the demands that we have put in how you use data, how you share data, how you do product safety, and the big amount, then you have lost the race. Your competitor have already won, And so it's the big cost that a startup has to face with trying to comply with all of this legislation that is the problem. And the left side of the European Parliament, they say, oh, you want to simplify AI Act and you want to simplify this legislation with the digital omnibuses because you just want Donald Trump and the American companies to win. No, it's the opposite. The American big tech, they already have resources, lawyers, and money to comply with difficult legislation. The one who not have that resources are our European startups and scale-ups, and they're the one who are competing with the American big tech. Mm-hmm. So we are doing this for our economy, for our companies and our jobs, not for the American ones, because they already comply. They already have the resources.
There is a lot to do, when it comes to, as you were saying, we have to start changing our mindset regarding AI, and how to become more competitive, of course.
Yeah, and also, do we want China to set the standards of AI or the US? Because this is already happening. So, I want the standards of the technological development to be here in Europe, that we are the most attractive continent in the world, that our kids want to grow up here, work here, develop here, that they're not saying that, oh, but there is no opportunities for me here. I want to go to Silicon Valley or Shenzhen because that's where the opportunities are. If we try to stop the AI development, this is exactly what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So that's why we need to take ownership. And I really think that we can. We have some of the best startups in Europe. We are stable democracies, which our competitors are not. We have a good safety net for people. And we have innovation. We just have to have a bit better confidence, and believe in ourselves that we can lead.
Exactly. As we always say in YEPP, we don't want to follow, we want to lead. So I don't know, Lucia, if you have any more questions.
Yeah, I feel this is a very interesting discussion. And I think that among the young people, they feel we have noticed some curiosity, but also maybe some concern about the coming future. So we have selected some questions that our followers wanted you to answer. So the first question is, how does Europe become the global leader in AI?
Yeah, this is the big question everybody is asking in across Europe and within all governments. I think the first thing we need to do is really to fix the legislation so it's easy to follow in Europe. Not, deregulate in the meaning that we don't need the legislation. I'm saying that we need to have clear legislation so everybody know how to comply. That, for example, it doesn't have to be a question mark, for example, if you comply or not with the AI Act or GDPR, or can I give a silly example? If you are selling a connected toothbrush in Europe that is collecting data and you process that data with AI, today, it could be seen as a high risk because you use medical mouth data. Those kind of questions has to be cleared out so that it's the legislations are easy to follow, clear for everybody. What are our rules here? So that they don't have to spend so much money to understand and interpret the legislation. So fix the legislation. make sure that we attract the best talents in Europe, researchers, engineers, product developers. European companies need to have skilled workforce, and some of them we need to have here in Europe, but some of them we need to also have outside of Europe. We need to have a talent visa to come to Europe so we can attract the best people, like for both in India or Silicon Valley, to come and build here in our countries. Another thing we need to do is to make sure that the investment, the money that is today, in bank accounts all over Europe. This is also one thing that is a difference between the US and many European countries. I must say that Sweden is probably the exception, is that the citizens in Europe, they are saving their money in bank accounts, and also our pension funds is not part of the stock exchange, which means that we are losing because of inflation, and that money is not used for investments for startups and scale-ups. While in the US, that's what they're doing. So they have much more of capital and investments to put into these new ideas and to these startups. People say that we don't have any capital in Europe. We have tons of capital. I mean, Mario Draghi in the report really pointed out that, was it 11 billion euros that is just sleeping in European bank accounts? This has to be unleashed. And what is needed is that the member states do the reforms on pensions so that the pension funds can be used to invest in innovation and new technologies, and that they create, like we have done in Sweden, which is now a recommendation to all member states in the EU, that they have to create an investments and savings account for all citizens. So you put more of your savings into the stock exchange so you can put them to grow. That's a good thing for the private economy, for every citizen in Europe, but that also gives more investment for European startups. And that's what we did in Sweden 14 years ago, and most of the Swedish adults are saving in this investments and savings account, which have made people's savings grow a lot. And it has also enabled more capital for startups. So I think the investment thing is very important. Make it easier to invest, take risks like they do in the US, and that we higher the AI literacy in our countries. Make it easier to use AI tools in schools, in the welfare systems, so that our population is ready and prepared for this new AI era that we are part of.
So, of course, we agree that politicians should make people's life easier, right? That's the main objective in the end, and better, of course. But thank you very much, because I think that we've tackled many different topics within or related to AI, but we have many things to reflect upon after the podcast. And now to wrap up the podcast, Arba, we have a little game called the YEPP test. I'll read out a list of questions, and some of them they reflect YEPP's perspectives or positions, on certain topics, and others won't. So you have to tell us if you agree or disagree. Are you ready for the game?
Oh, I think so.
I think that you are, because once a YEPPer, forever a YEPPer. So I'm sure that you will know. So let's get started with this. Do you support having a lower income tax rate for people aged 18 to 35?
Yes, of course. And we've done it several times in Sweden before, and it was very efficient and made the unemployment rate go down among young people. So it works.
Okay. We also support it. Do you support qualified majority voting on foreign and security policy at the European Council?
Yes, I do. And I've also pushed for it in the European Parliament.
Okay, thank you very much. We also support it. Do you support the ban on tobacco snus across Europe?
No, definitely not. I think that snus, the Swedish snus, should be sold in our internal market, and I think it's a bit hypocrite because snus has been the reason why our rate on smoking has gone down to almost like nothing soon.
Yeah.
So it's a much better alternative than smoking.
We do know that there is a lot of debate regarding this topic, but we are against the ban as well. So,
well, good. There is hope for the future.
of course, we are very liberal when it comes to this.
I can say that was not the case when I was in YEPP. We had to fight for it, and but I'm glad that the new generation in YEPP is more, I would say, pro internal market.
Of course, it's always like controversial. We have like different opinions even within YEPP, of course. But yeah, we even have resolutions if you ever want to have a read, or if you want to read them, we have them in our website. Thank you very much, Arba, for being with us today. It was very interesting, listening to you. We know that you will push, for all these topics that you always care also about the youth perspective, for this, and we hope to welcome you again in YEPP's episodes in the future. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Lucia.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's always I'm so proud of YEPP and what it has become. And during my time, it was very difficult for us young people in YEPP to get our voice heard in the European Parliament. And now YEPP is holding podcasts in the European Parliament. So your voice has really become strong, and I'm proud to be an alumni member and to support you whenever I can. So good luck.
Thank you very much, Arba.
You've been listening to the YEPP Show. Thank you for joining us today, and make sure to follow us on our social media.